joining us today for this webinar on the opportunities for innovation in relation to the Sustainable Cities Challenge for Venice. We are really excited to speak with you today and looking forward to sharing some insights and then opening this up for some questions and answers towards the end of this. Before we get going, just to share that we will start recording, and this recording will be available after the webinar for your reference and to share with others who may not have been able to make it today. So the webinar slides and resources will also be shared. And as I mentioned, the Q&A session will be held at the end of the webinar. Please do feel free, though, to submit questions via the Zoom chat feature as we go. And then when we do get to the Q&A session, we will take your questions via the chat. But equally, if you would like to share those verbally, then we can go ahead and unmute you so that you can go ahead and speak. So again, my name is Janet Sutherland-McCormick. I'm a Senior Program Manager with Challenge Works, which is one of the key delivery partners for the Sustainable Cities Challenge, which is funded and led by the Toyota Mobility Foundation. I'm joined today by Roberto De Bosolo, who is the head of Mobility Division at the City of Venice. So we're very pleased and privileged to have him join us, and you'll hear from him a little bit later on today. There are a few other colleagues on the line from the City of Venice, and they will be helping us as we work through the Q&A session later on. I'm also joined by Hannah Olland, who is our Urban Mobility Research Analyst from the World Resources Institute Ross Centre for Sustainable Cities, and Hannah will be sharing some of her insights and presenting during this webinar. So you'll hear from her a little bit later on. So a huge thank you to both of them for participating today. So a recap of what we'll be covering. We'll kick off with a bit of an overview of what the Sustainable City Challenge Venice is all about. We'll then move into a discussion around the current barriers to innovation in adopting sustainable mobility. We'll talk then about opportunities and solutions in the space, before then spending a little bit of time on human-centered design. And it's after this period that Roberto will share some thoughts and insights from his side, and those will be translated from Italian into English. And then we'll finish up this webinar with a Q&A session. So let's get going. The Sustainable Cities Challenge Venice. So the wider Sustainable Cities Challenge is really all about harnessing the power, the creativity and the energy of innovation to look at improving access to safe, equitable and sustainable mobility solutions for all. We have 3 city challenges that are currently open for entries, and they all have deadlines in September of this year. So those are Detroit, where we're looking at transforming freight, Varanasi, where we're looking at innovating crowd flow, and of course Venice, which is all about embracing sustainable mobility. Apologies. So let's drill down into a little bit more around what the Venice Challenge is all about. And we've got a short video to share with you. So please enjoy this.
When people move, cities come to life. When we can move more freely, we can achieve more. But how can we continue to make our cities smarter and embrace sustainable opportunities? How can we build the cities of tomorrow, today? The Sustainable Cities Challenge is seeking innovators from around the world to bring innovative solutions that increase the use of low and zero carbon transport. With up to $3 million in funding available, We are seeking plans and technologies that will benefit Venice and cities all over the world. So, as the needs of people evolve, cities can continue to grow with them. Together, we can work to build a more sustainable future and help to transform the lives of millions of people. Join us, the Sustainable Cities Challenge.
Great. Hopefully that gave you a really good overview of the challenge, and now we'll delve into a little bit more of the detail. So we have a challenge statement. You could also call it a problem statement for this challenge. And a challenge statement is really a call to action for innovators such as yourselves. And it really focuses on explaining what the specific aims of the challenge are and what the desired outcomes are, but without predetermining what the solutions are. And this is really important to ensure that we have as broad a scope as possible to get really interesting ideas and solutions into the mix. So the specific challenge statement for the Venice challenge is this, and I am going to read it out explicitly because the wording is important here. So we are looking to create innovative solutions that change behavior, increasing the use and the adoption of existing low and zero carbon transport modes in the city of Venice, with a specific focus on the mainland and motorized islands. These solutions must address at least one of the following: increasing active mobility, increasing public transport use, and also increasing usage of shared mobility. So any proposed solution must also take into account the motivational aspect of behavior change. And we'll talk a little bit about that change in a short while. So delving a bit deeper, we want to share some insight on the judging criteria. Now, these are the criteria that will be used to assess and select the semi-finalists, but also later on the finalists and eventually the winners of the Sustainable Cities Challenge Venice. And so you can see here we've got 5 criteria: innovation, impact, usability, viability, and team capacity. So I'll spend a little bit of time just talking about this in a bit more detail. So with innovation, we're looking for solutions to offer a new innovative approach to improving motivation among Venice residents. And we're looking for solutions to be brand new or adapted from other contexts. In the context of impact, we're looking for solutions that significantly and tangibly increase the adoption and use of low to zero carbon transport modes. In terms of usability, we want solutions that continuously engage with its target users and that take on the insights and understandings from those users and address them in order to be able to meet the needs, the preferences, and the behaviors of those individuals. In terms of viability, we're looking for solutions to be viable and sustainable beyond the lifespan of this challenge. This is about a long-term solution or solutions. And we want to see that these solutions have the potential to scale or to be replicated in other contexts. And finally, team capacity. So this is all about making sure that the team that is applying have the capacity and the wider resources to develop and demonstrate their solutions within the challenge timeframe. These are all really critical criteria, and all entries will be judged against them. So if we jump over to structure and timeline, here we're looking at, you can see our timeline here. We've broken down the key milestones across this period. I think the first thing to flag is that any innovator teams that are selected to be semi-finalists will need to attend an in-person Innovator Academy in Venice from the 14th to the 16th of January next year. But actually, what does it mean being a participant in the challenge? Well, we have 3 stages, and the first stage is a semi-finalist stage. We'll have up to 10 semi-finalist teams. They will be participating in the stage between November of this year and March of next year. To participate in the challenge, any selected teams will need to sign an innovator agreement within 1 week of receiving the agreement. And that really to ensure that we make the most of the time available, and we don't want to waste time in that contracting period. We want to jump straight into the work. And as part of this stage, teams will be provided with a grant of $50,000 USD each to focus on solution development and relationship building. In terms of the finalist stage, we'll have up to 5 finalists, and they will be working through this stage between May of next year and December of next year. And during that period, they will be receiving a grant of up to $130,000 each. And again, that will be looking at a solution demonstration and refinement. So it's all building, it's all cumulative. And then finally, the winner stage, and that's where we'll be selecting up to 3 winners in March of 2026. And there will be a pot of up to $1.5 million of implementation funding to be shared amongst those winners to implement their solution. And this is about implementing post March of 2026 and ongoing implementation beyond the lifespan of the challenge. So yes, so this last box here just underscores what I've just shared, that all the funding must be used to develop, test, demonstrate, and implement your solution in the city of Venice. So very quickly on the entry process, we have a deadline on the 30th of September, 2 p.m. Central European Summertime, and we have a downloadable PDF entry form that you can look at and prepare offline, but you must submit your entry using the online portal. We will not be accepting any PDF or local copy forms. It must be via the portal. And before you do submit your entry, it's important that you read and understand a few different key documents. We have our challenge terms and conditions. We also have our privacy policy, as well as eligibility and judging criteria and that challenge statement that I shared earlier on. And you can find all of the information on our website, and you can download our entrant handbook, which will then link you to all of this information. So at this point, I'm going to hand over to Hannah to take us through. Am I handing over to you, Hannah? No, sorry, this is me too. So I'm going to take you through the current barriers to innovation in adopting sustainable mobility. And I guess the first thing to say here, a few things around Venice in particular. So we all know Venice is a very unique and varied, it has a very varied mobility and cultural landscape. People think of Venice as kind of just that beautiful city that you see where all the films are filmed, but actually there's a much broader ecosystem there. You've got the mainland and the motorized islands. The city is an iconic Italian port, and it's one of the world's oldest tourist and cultural centers. But it also already has an extensive public transport system via many very different features, so via water, land, rail, and on the mainland in particular. And the city has a really impressive range of low carbon and mobility options. It's invested massively in the infrastructure and has made impressive strides in creating transport options for its residents. But the key challenge is that not enough residents have taken advantage of these opportunities. And so many cities struggle to get residents to embrace these. So this challenge is an exciting opportunity to develop solutions to get people moving more sustainably, which is very exciting. So here's where we talk a little bit about mobility and behavior change and trying to understand what the key factors that influence how and when people start to use new sustainable modes of transport. And obviously a critical factor we know in mobility choices is habit. Few people switch directly from one type of transportation to another for the same trip. They stay with what they know. And so there are usually net changes in transport modes that are brought on due to 2 particular points. One is change in life circumstance. which acts as a trigger to think about travel and changing the way they move, but also age. Younger people are more likely to make changes to their movement. And so an example is your commute to work will look very much the same each week. However, if you do change jobs or you move house, then you need to consider different ways to get to work. And that's where you'll have a shift. So let's talk a little bit more about mobility and behavior change. So there are five here that we're going to talk about. Costs. So obviously this is a large factor, but the perception of costs are not always accurate. And sometimes there are hidden costs, for example, insurance. Attitude is another key thing. Negative attitudes. There are changing perceptions of public transport that took place during and after COVID-19, for example. So that has a really big influence on things. Knowledge. This is key. People need the information that's available and accessible to them to understand what options are available and what their alternatives are. Social norms can really influence here. Other people influence us. Normative messaging can change behavior. And finally, capability. And this is more than just physical ability. It requires an understanding of things like apps, payment options, routes, traffic laws. And sometimes there's a perceived lack of skill, resource, or time, which potentially prevents usage and uptake of these options. So if we delve a little bit deeper, my last slide here before I hand over to Hannah is really about this behavior change model, the capability, opportunity, and motivation COM-B model. And this really breaks down into three areas. The capability. So can the behavior be accomplished in principle? Is the knowledge there, the skills, the ability to engage in a particular behavior change, both physical and psychological? Then there's an opportunity piece, right? Is there sufficient opportunity for a behavior to be taking place or to change? And what external factors can make a behavior possible? So again, here you've got the physical side, but you've also got the social side. And finally, motivation, which is the key piece that we want to be focusing on in the context of the Sustainable Cities Challenge Venice. Motivation. Is there sufficient motivation for behavior change to take place? And what are the internal processes that influence our decision-making and also our behavior? And these break down to automatic, but also reflective. And so really an individual's behavior, a group's behavior will change if things across these three areas are successfully implemented. So again, we're focusing on the motivational aspect of behavior change. There is an overlap across these three areas in terms of physical capability and physical opportunity, but those are not explicitly relevant for this challenge. We're really looking at motivation as key. So with that, I'm going to pass over to Hannah, who's going to take us through this next section on opportunities and solutions.
Thanks so much, Janet. Yeah, so after learning a little bit about the barriers that Venice is facing and then also mobility and behavior change generally, we can talk a little bit more about the opportunities and solutions that will exist in this space and talk about a couple of case studies in particular. Great, so as we look to the future of urban mobility, we want improved mobility systems across the board, but what are we looking for within that? One is sustainability. We want to have low carbon or even zero carbon modes. We want them to be safe and accessible for all users. We want them to, of course, improve quality of life. And what have we learned through our experience in Venice, but also more generally about mobility systems across the globe? And that's while infrastructure and other hard measures, which I'll talk about in a moment, are really important and key, there are other elements that are at play. And these are things like the overall mobility experience, as well as choices and options regarding mobility modes that fit best into people's lifestyles. So we'll dive into one case study here that's called Diamond, or Dynamic Mobility Nudge. And the aim of this project was to enrich digital nudging to improve sustainable mobility behavior and choices using publicly available data sources. And this project really started because they were trying to reduce transport emissions in cities. And as many of us know, transport is the source of 20% of CO2 emissions globally. So huge issue to tackle. But they realized, like I've said, that hard interventions to change mobility behavior, although they're very effective, they can only go so far. They're also often difficult to implement politically, and they can be really costly too. And so they saw a need to develop effective soft interventions, and those are behavior change interventions, which we are going to call nudges. And those relates to motivation, as Janet talked about with the COM-B model, social norms, and things of that nature. And as they started to develop these pilots, these interventions, they took an interdisciplinary approach. They drew on the fields of behavioral economics, psychology, geoinformatics, software development, all to change and influence the choice environment people are in when they choose a travel mode. And this, of course, influences the overall choice architecture. So what exactly did they do? They created a pretty large nudge repository, and you can actually find their nudging handbook PDF online if you want to look deeper into this. But they created a nudge repository that linked publicly available situational data like weather, infrastructure, traffic to different nudging methods that will influence mobility behavior and choices. Again, they used that COM-B model, but they also co-created nudges with citizens in the locations where they were piloting these interventions. And these were taking place in Salzburg, Austria, and Uppsala, Sweden. So some examples of the nudges that they have in their handbook and that they were piloting are rewards, situational awareness prompts, reminders, community goals, and challenges. So for example, it could be something as simple as getting a notification on your phone that it's a beautiful day today, there's no traffic on the streets, you should take your bike to work today, all the way up into having incentives or vouchers for using your car less during the week, for example. And as part of this project, they also conducted some community events to ensure that there was uptake and buy-in from the community where they were piloting these interventions too. Well, some of the key findings they had, and these findings are just from the pilot in Salzburg, Austria. One is about the content of the nudges itself. So the most effective ones they found related to health, the environment, and inspiration. But that, of course, links directly into the challenges, in that a lot of the participants that they had were people who are already using their bike, who are already interested in sustainable mobility modes. And so, of course, that connects to interest in health, environment, inspiration, of course. But even with participants who were already maybe using sustainable modes, they saw a downward trend in participation over time. You can see a lot of peaks and troughs in this graph, but overall downward trend as the pilot went on. And some lessons and opportunities for innovation. They found that gamification was a strong motivator, especially in combination with a community goal for all participants. So, for example, getting your neighborhood out engaged in a step count challenge to walk between, you want to walk from Beijing to London, step count, something like this. There's also digital nudging. They said this should really be embedded in a social setting, and it works best in tandem with other measures, thinking back to those hard measures we briefly talked about. And one of the biggest challenges was something I've just touched on, and that relates to retention. It's really hard to find and motivate participants to partake in these pilots, and of course to find those people who were really trying to influence their behavior already, not those who are already interested in biking and that. So second case study we won't go quite as deep into, but it's by Loud Mobility UK and She's Electric, and this is a widespread campaign across the UK to enable more women to cycle as their mode of transport through e-bikes and e-cargo bikes. So at the start of the campaign, they realized that, and this is pretty common knowledge, but there are many barriers to preventing women from cycling and using cycling as a mode of transport. And in so doing, they sort of realized that e-bikes were empowering women to take up cycling and overcome some of these barriers, which I'll touch on next. So as they started their campaign, the key phrase they heard again and again was, "I would love to cycle, but," and there were endless things at the end of this but some of the biggest barriers were safety. Of course, safety is a huge barrier for anyone who's looking to bike. Image, perhaps you don't want to sweat on your way to work, perhaps you don't see yourself as a lycra wearing cyclist, for example, as well as hassle and convenience, and that relates to maybe childcare duties or going to the shops and things after work. But then they also were finding that, according to Sustrans, 83% of women in the UK who had used an e-bike felt more confident after using it. So that was a boon to their campaign. But they also saw that the target users that they're trying to reach were hesitant to try e-bikes in the shops. And that might connect again to that image issue that we're talking about. So what did they do? They took events and e-bikes directly to women to try to lower the barriers to trying them and to accessing them. And they developed a partnership model with bike shops, manufacturers, local councils and schemes so that women could again have better access to e-bikes to try them out and get comfortable with them. And of course, they focus on matching women to the right bikes so that they were most confident to bike going forward. And what were the results? Again, more than a campaign, they wanted to see a direct and measurable result. And so they found that 10% of the women that they had actually engaged with bought a bike after this, an e-bike after this, and that 75% of women that they were engaging with were actually trying an e-bike for the first time. And in 2024, they actually have a goal of reaching 1 million women. So if their 10% holds, it would be actually 100,000 women who buy e-bikes this year, which would be a really fantastic number to see. But I'll pass back to Jan to talk a little bit more about human-centered design. Those are just some examples of solutions you guys can ponder as you think about your entry. Thanks.
Brilliant. Thanks, Hannah. That was really, really helpful actually to go into a couple of life examples of what potential solutions could be like. And as Hannah shared, these are examples, these aren't necessarily dictating what solutions can only be, developed during this challenge. So really the world's your oyster, and this is just a starting point for inspiration. But this last section that I'm going to spend a little bit of time on is around human-centered design. And so really I want to kind of get us to look a little bit on how do we turn potential solutions, potential ideas into reality. And as part of that, we need to ensure that any solutions that are developed are effective and impactful, and make sure that they're doing that by being fit for purpose, being contextually relevant in terms of Venice and the mainland and motorized islands, making sure solutions are informed and that they're future-proof, so they can be implemented on an ongoing basis to really create that sustainability and that longevity. So human-centered design, what comes to mind when you hear that term? It's a bit of a buzzword, very similar to innovation as a whole, but what do we actually mean by that? And so really, it's also known as design thinking, which I think is a bit more of a common term and comfortable term. And essentially, it puts people at the core of a solution. It's about designing with people, not just designing for people. And it's about creating products, services, whatever it might be, that truly meet the needs of your user, your customer, or your beneficiary. And so in practice, again, that means designing for people, not necessarily directly for the problem. And so that means starting off in your discovery phase, right? Engaging with people, your users, your beneficiaries, and the people essentially that you're designing for. What frustrates them? What makes them happy? What are their needs, essentially? And then taking all of those insights and being able to analyze them, understanding what did they say? What didn't they say? How did that feel? What does that mean for the design of your solution? And then finally, moving that into a testing piece, right? So prototyping and iterating, refining what you're developing, getting your prototype, your solutions in the hands of people and understanding what do they do? What do they say? Adapting based on those insights and being able to refine your solution, do further testing and do that loop as iteratively and as many times as you need to. So I want to share a couple of really basic real life examples just to be able to try and make the concept of HCD a little bit more tangible. And these are very basic examples, but I think quite effective. The first is the Norman door. Now, there was a bit of a problem initially when people would see a door handle and people's instinct is to pull on the door. But actually, you kind of think, oh no, what's wrong with me? I'm not paying attention. My brain's not working. But that's not it. The instinct of a human being is to pull if you see a handle. And so the solution that a UX designer called Norman Hall came up with was to just simply remove the handle for doors that needed to be pushed. And so that's where you get that difference between the pull and the push. And now since hearing about this and learning about this, I can never look at a door in a different way. The second basic example is a toothbrush for children. So IDEO, which is a very big innovation organization, innovation consultancy, were tasked with developing a child's toothbrush. And, initially the idea was to take a regular toothbrush and make it smaller. But children, young children in particular, do not have the fine motor skills, the hand-eye coordination to be able to handle a regular toothbrush that's quite thin, quite small. And so after doing a lot of research with children, understanding how they use these types of things, their solution was to come up with a fat, grippy, handled toothbrush that had fun colors, fun shapes, and characters. A really simple solution, but one that they probably wouldn't have arrived at unless they really looked at children, what their needs were and what some of the things they were dealing with in terms of coordination and their physical capabilities. So if we take all of this and this concept of HCD and we say, well, what does this mean for Venice? Well, for the Sustainable Cities Challenge Venice, innovator teams will be supported to connect with local stakeholders, to connect closely with the city, to engage in effective and user-focused solution development. And that will include a few, but they're not listed here, all of them, but including things like getting baseline data, understanding the specific nuances of Venice, being able to test solutions in situ with users themselves, with people. That's the key thing here, right? Applying insights from those testings to refine their solutions further, testing again and iterating again. And so, this is what the practical application of HCD is in the context of the Sustainable Cities Challenge Venice. And so with that, it kind of comes to the close of our presentation. I'd love to be able to introduce our colleague from the city of Venice, Roberto. I'm just going to double check if I can go ahead and unmute him. Julia, Paula, I just want to double check that.
Yes. Hello, Janet.
Hi, Paula. Hi, Paula.
I don't think Roberto is connected.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I can maybe ask Julia because he wanted to be connected, but he was not. Yeah.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, Julia.
Yes, I just sent him a text message and I hope he will be able to join soon, but Paula and I are here, so we can also go ahead,
Okay.
I think.
Great. Okay, so let's then come back to Roberto and his kind of insights that he'll share, and let's skip over to the Q&A session and get stuck into that. I see that we've got a few questions that have come through the Q&A, so we'll just go through those. And again, if anyone wants to share their question verbally, then please do raise your hand and we can go ahead and do that. Pawan, I see that you've raised your hand, so why don't you go ahead first? Let me go ahead and unmute you. Bear with me a moment. Okay, please do go ahead.
You can hear me now, right? Yeah, perfect.
Yes, we can. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I'm going to ask the same question that I wrote in text. What is the kind of the technology readiness level that you're expecting? I understand from your presentation, it's quite a bit early stage. But so I would like to know, is there a minimum kind of proof of concept or at least to a certain extent, because the solution will evolve a lot. So I would like to know that what is that minimum level at the time of the application that you're expecting?
Thanks so much for that question, Pavan. That's a really good one. In terms of that readiness level, we are looking for a range of solutions. So you may have a solution, you as in the general, you may have a solution that is already in market and you want to adapt it for the context of Venice, or you may have a brand new solution in its entirety that you're looking to develop and test and iterate on. So we're looking at a spectrum of solutions, really. The innovation piece is really about being able to be either new or new for the context of Venice. And so that does allow us for a little bit of a range in terms of readiness level. Pawan, I hope that answers your question. Oh, you're on mute.
No, I said it answers my question. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. So let's jump into our questions here. The first one is, while our pitch and documentation should be in English, do our solutions need to support other languages? That's a great question. And so, yes, you make a good point. The pitch, the documentation, your submission to your entry to the challenge needs to be in English, and the support that we'll be providing throughout the challenge duration to successful innovator teams will be in English. However, your solutions are being implemented in Venice together with this, with the city of Venice. So, being able to be able to communicate with users on the ground is going to be critical, and being able to understand, going back to your team capacity, do you have any Italian speakers, or might you need some translation support? So it's just being able to map all of that out. And of course, thinking about wider longevity of a solution, will your solution be applicable or relevant across wider Italy, moving forward, or possibly even globally? Again, this city challenge is part of the wider Sustainable Cities Challenge with Venice, Detroit, and Varanasi. And obviously, there are so many other cities that could potentially benefit from solutions that come through this challenge. So I hope that that does answer your question. If not, please do add to the chat. If I jump down to the next question, so we have got, have there been related initiatives tried in Venice that have or haven't worked in the past? So that's a great question. I actually might see if Paola, Julia, you might be able to comment on this. I think you're probably best placed to respond.
Paola, we could also save all the Venice-related questions for
Roberto.
For Roberto, he's trying to access the meeting, but apparently is having some troubles. So trying to fix that. So if we could save maybe the Venice-related questions for later, I think that would be better.
Sure, we can do that. So let's keep that one live for now. The next question here then is, how much detail should the application go? So thanks for your question, Linda. Really good one. I recommend you go and look at the online, the downloadable form for the application form. There you can really see the types of questions we ask, how much detail you need to provide in terms of your solution, and being able to respond to those questions, which each track over to the judging criteria that we've laid out. So I recommend you go and take a look at that so that you get a sense of what those questions are. There are 4 sections in it, so I recommend you look at that. The next question here from Alessandro is, hi, can companies with contracts in place with Venice City on mobility apply to the challenge? That is an excellent question. I don't know if I can fully answer that right now. It might be one that Roberto can answer, or it might be one that Alessandro will have to come back to you on. So let's put a pin in that one and maybe come back to it in a moment. The next question from Katharina is, will there be a general survey about mobility behavior at the beginning? Oh, that's a great question. Data is obviously a key thing here. Hannah, not to put you in the spotlight, but do you want to kind of share what our thinking is around this?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So in the entrant pack, there is some data there for you to sort of look at and get a good feel for what's going on in Venice right now. There is some also third-party data you can find online. But we are actually looking into performing our own survey and trying to get some data to help inform your solutions and just inform us more about what's going on here. I don't know if, also not to put anyone on the spot, if Julia, I know that you've told me a bit before about some other surveys the city has done on mobility behaviors in Venice. If you want to maybe just highlight some key things that you've told us before about the city. She might be working with Roberto to get him online.
Yeah.
But if I remember correctly, I don't want to like misrepresent anything, but they did ask some citizens, for example, why aren't you biking? And one of the answers was perhaps safety, infrastructure, and also convenience. And these are things that as we touched on before, the combi model and other examples, we're going to try to influence people to take up biking for other reasons, maybe perhaps gamify it and other things like this. But we are working on sort of doing more discovery on the data in that regard.
And I guess the follow-on question that Katharina had was what mobility data will be provided to participants. I think, Hannah, you already kind of addressed that. So, Katharina, hopefully that does answer your question. And yes, if you again take a look at the entrant handbook and the information that's shared there, then we can, you can have a look at that. And if you have further questions, please do reach out. So just to take a pause here, I know we've still got 2 outstanding questions, but we do have Roberto who has joined. So I did want to maybe take the opportunity for Roberto to just share some thoughts and some insights that he may have in terms of the Sustainable Cities Challenge Venice and just the perspective of the city. And please bear with us as we will do a bit of translation from Italian to English. Please go ahead, Roberto.
Okay.
Okay. Hi, Roberto. Thank you again for joining us.
Good morning, everybody. Paola, can
Yes.
you help me? Mi dici sinteticamente le ultime 2 domande?
A queste alle quali allora una sostanzialmente chiede se abbiamo già realizzato delle iniziative a Venezia che non hanno funzionato, delle iniziative legate al tema della challenge che non hanno funzionato. Poi vabbè c'è quella della se una compagnia, una società ha già un contratto con Venezia può partecipare alla challenge. Questa devo dire, non lo so neanche. Forse sì, cioè può comunque fare l'application. Another target field, I understood that there should be testing with local people. Would you provide translation? Ah sì, poi anche in un'altra domanda chiedevano se la challenge è in inglese, ma poi bisognerà avere documenti in italiano, visto che siamo in Italia. Quindi qua chiedeva anche se cioè possiamo farlo noi la traduzione, se capisco bene. Chiedo aiuto anche a Giulia.
Vabbè, questo della traduzione ci riserviamo di verificare se riusciamo. Sul fatto che qualche ditta possa partecipare se ha già un contratto con noi, direi di sì, perché essendo un progetto innovativo si concentrerà su cose che non esistono ancora e quindi non attività già contrattualizzate. E quindi secondo me, se è possibile, io darei una risposta affermativa.
Aspetta che traduco allora. Ok, about the second question from Alessandro Felici. Yes, if a company has already a contract with the City of Venice, the challenge will be anyway on different activities, so can participate like the other companies. Yes. Ok, vai Roberto.
E per quanto riguarda invece la domanda più sostanziosa riferita al fatto che quali sono le attività che abbiamo tentato di fare sulla sfida di questo progetto che non hanno funzionato molto bene, direi quasi tutte, nel senso che dalla costruzione della rete ciclabile, che è una delle più diffuse in Italia, al fatto che nonostante ci sia una rete ciclabile così diffusa, non ci sia stata una risposta significativa di incremento di utilizzo della bicicletta. Questa, diciamo, è forse la prima azione che non ha dato, potremmo dire che non che ha fallito, che è fallita, ma che non ha dato riscontri che ci aspettavamo in termini di mobilità sostenibile. Poi questo perché? Perché nei primi questionari fatti ormai 10 anni fa sul tema alla domanda perché non usi la bicicletta, anche rispetto a chi avrebbe voluto usarla, la risposta più frequente era perché mancano le piste ciclabili, perché sono tutte interrotte. Oggi questo problema è stato ampiamente risolto, ma nonostante la risoluzione di questo problema non abbiamo registrato un incremento significativo di utilizzo della bicicletta. Poi le altre azioni che potremmo citare sono altre azioni sperimentali finanziate da progetti europei, per esempio sulla mobilità nei percorsi casa-scuola. Hanno funzionato fino al momento in cui c'è stata una presenza fisica da parte dell'amministrazione comunale, dell'ente pubblico, a incentivare la mobilità sostenibile su questi spostamenti. Nel momento in cui invece ci aspettavamo, speravamo che la comunità locale potesse proseguire da sola su questo sforzo, abbiamo registrato un calo.
Okay. Okay, I try to translate about the questions from the anonymous person. If the City of Venice already experimented related initiatives, this haven't worked. It's the base of the reason why we are now in the challenge is that the City of Venice recently in the last 10 years really developed the bike lane infrastructure. So we started from a very I can say short and not linking part of bike lanes 10 years ago, and then we realized a really network of bike lines, and also we work on making safer the junction between the different bike lines, so make it safer for bikers to use them. Even if we made this, the numbers of cyclists didn't increase. So this is the first result that we see. It is the reason why we are into the challenge. So something has to really be made really different from before. We had also some initiatives of campaigning or promotion of the use of bicycles, starting from the schools with young students, the parents, and also some initiatives inside big companies involving in some politics or to make employees to use the bicycle or public transportation or sharing mobility. But this really gave us a short outcome, I have to say. So we really are looking for, as a City of Venice, a new way, a change of behavior that we didn't put in place yet. Okay.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Roberto and Paola. I think there is another question that's come through from Pavan in Italian, so I am not going to try and read it because I think my accent will not do it justice. So Paola, I'll let you go ahead and read that and relay it to Roberto.
Ok, ciao Roberto. L'Agenzia di Trasporto Pubblico di Venezia è coinvolta nel consorzio. La nostra soluzione funziona bene, integrata nell'app di biglietteria dell'ASP, che non so cosa sia, fammi sapere se la cosa è fattibile. Chiedo a te. Ovviamente il Local Public Transportation is involved, company.
Cioè, quando dice l'agenzia di trasporto pubblico è coinvolta nel consorzio, intende quale consorzio? Quello
Cioè,
che promuove il progetto?
sì, quello della Toyota, cioè
Ah,
della Challenge. Che
no.
diciamo tramite Gabriele, insomma, no?
È sicuro che per noi una proposta completa non possa trascurare il TPL e
Mhm.
quindi anche l'agenzia di trasporto pubblico. Eh, cioè, sì, io prima ho fatto riferimento solo alla rete ciclabile e alla mobilità casa-scuola, come uno come infrastruttura e uno come tema di mobilità. Però erano due esempi. È chiaro che è un progetto che vuole incrementare la mobilità sostenibile in una città, non può fare a meno di essere integrato con il TPL.
Okay. So the question is if the company of the local public transportation is involved in the project. Is not since the beginning. That I mean that it's a company controlled by the city, but is another entity. But of course, the solution that we will choose will include also in the system the local public transportation, so that the company will be involved in testing the solution. We talked before to the answering to the other question about the infrastructure, the bike lanes, and also the initiatives of promoting the use of bicycles, because this is what we really tested, we made. Then, of course, the local public transportation is part of a sustainable mobility policy.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And Pavan, I hope that answers your question. I have attempted to kind of add a little bit of a response based on what Paola has shared. So I think that we are good to go there in terms of questions. I don't see anything else there, but I do see that Alessandro has raised his hand. So I'm going to go ahead and, Alessandro, give you the mic so that you can share a further question that you may have.
Hello. No idea whether you see me or not. I guess no.
We can hear you.
Okay, good. Shall I go in English or in Italian?
Why don't you go ahead in Italian, and then maybe Paola can share kind of the answer in English afterwards.
Ok, sono Alessandro Felici. Buongiorno a tutti. Allora, ci sono tanti, avevo bisogno di capire un po' meglio la direzione, perché oggi abbiamo parlato tanto di innovazione, quindi cose che non esistono, che possono aiutare il cambiamento dell'habit. Se noi analizziamo i casi di successo internazionali di città come Barcellona, Parigi, Budapest, anche Londra, New York, con utilizzi altissimi, ci sono tante informazioni disponibili su cose che possono essere fatte in qualsiasi città, non soltanto a Venezia, per far funzionare bene un servizio, che poi sono cose che spesso si discutono, sono note, non si tratta di reinventare la ruota qui. Quindi si parla di disponibilità di mezzi, che è una cosa su cui spesso ci confrontiamo anche con il comune, per cui ci vuole la certezza di uscire da casa e trovare un mezzo disponibile per potersi spostare, quindi la densità di mezzi sufficiente, la disponibilità dei mezzi e l'accessibilità. Poi ci sono le infrastrutture, che queste nel vostro caso è, diciamo, un punto già risolto, e l'ultimo a cui facevi riferimento anche di Bussolo, che è l'integrazione col TPL locale. Le città che hanno fatto, diciamo, investito anche nel tempo, in alcuni casi sono percorsi anche lunghi, durati anni, però hanno investito su queste variabili, per cui flotte con dimensioni importanti disponibili a prezzi convenienti, quantomeno, spesso anche gratis, diciamo convenienti rispetto al TPL, sono arrivati a utilizzi altissimi. In questo momento a Parigi, diciamo, l'utilizzo della mobilità leggera ha superato anche l'utilizzo dell'autovettura. Poi là ci sono anche scelte politiche molto molto forti a sostegno della micromobilità. Però il mio concetto di fondo è: la tecnologia può accelerare un processo di avvicinamento alla micromobilità. Noi non abbiamo mai percepito un'attitudine contraria all'utilizzo diciamo, della mobilità leggera, che sia bicicletta o altre cose. L'attitudine è tendenzialmente positiva, poi bisogna mettere in essere tutta quell'ecosistema e quella infrastruttura di offerta che fa sì che le persone lo adottino realmente, perché poi se 7 volte su 10 non trovano il mezzo, tendono a dimenticarsi del servizio. Però l'innovazione può accelerare un processo di avvicinamento alla micromobilità, ma ci sono già delle strategie note, non innovative, da riapplicare, che hanno funzionato ovunque. Quindi la mia domanda è capire quanto proprio l'obiettivo sia puntare, che si parlava anche, no, di riapplicare modelli già esistenti, che in questo caso non necessariamente sono innovativi, di quanto puntare su una innovazione anche nell'area della comunicazione per rompere delle barriere, o su una struttura di servizio che può essere, diciamo, può replicare le esperienze di successo non solo internazionali ma anche italiane in realtà, che poi nel tempo diventano sostenibili, perché poi non sono investimenti perenni, sono investimenti per far partire la macchina, ma la stessa città di Budapest, che ha praticamente persone che viaggiano gratuitamente, ha un servizio a break-even con persone che pagano 5 euro al mese per viaggiare flat. Ci ha investito 10 anni, però gli sta funzionando. Quindi ho parlato tanto. Però il mio punto è: io personalmente non credo sia proprio un punto di innovazione, quanto di fare per bene i basic e garantire che il servizio sia sempre disponibile e in ordine, cosa che adesso economicamente sappiamo che è un po' complessa. Ma non era un punto negoziale, volevo soltanto capire la direzione, se bisogna puntare sull'innovazione o se si può fare un ragionamento sui basic del servizio che possono essere migliorati, oltre all'integrazione col TPL, che chiaramente quella è una parte innovativa.
Okay. So I'm going to try to translate.
Ok, posso dare già la risposta, poi così traduci domanda e risposta?
Ok.
Grazie. Allora, la risposta è un po' ripetitiva di quello che ho detto prima, cioè noi abbiamo fatto due esperienze, ho citato due esperienze concrete, importanti sia per quantità che per qualità di progetto, quello del completamento della rete ciclabile e quello della mobilità sostenibile nei percorsi casa-scuola, che hanno completato il loro percorso di raggiungimento di ottimi livelli di quello che nella domanda si definiva correttamente come livello base, non innovativo, per infrastrutturarsi al meglio e garantire le condizioni migliori per la mobilità sostenibile. Questo l'abbiamo fatto in questi due esempi che ho portato, non abbiamo trovato però quelle risposte che, di incremento di mobilità sostenibile che ci aspettavamo e che chi ha fatto la domanda giustamente ha riscontrato in altre città europee. Nella domanda, chi ha fatto la domanda non ha portato neanche un esempio italiano. sono tutte città esterne al nostro paese, e questo qualcosa vorrà dire. In altre città probabilmente è vero quello che sosteneva chi ha fatto l'ultima domanda, che è sufficiente creare queste condizioni base per raggiungere, per incrementare la mobilità sostenibile. E i dati dicono questo, gli esempi di quelle città citate dicono questo. In Italia probabilmente è necessario qualcosa di più di quello che si sta facendo per convincere l'italiano medio a non utilizzare l'auto privata come mezzo di spostamento prevalente, sia che faccia mezzo chilometro per accompagnare i bambini a scuola, sia che faccia 1 chilometro per arrivare al posto di lavoro, che ne faccia 5. L'auto privata in Italia, lo dicono i numeri, nelle città, nella maggior parte delle città, sia in quelle come la nostra, dove le infrastrutture per la mobilità sostenibile sono già ad un buon livello, sia in altre città dove le infrastrutture per la mobilità sostenibile non sono ad un buon livello, l'auto è comunque il mezzo, l'auto privata è il mezzo prevalente di spostamento per le piccole, medie e lunghe distanze. Quindi qualcosa di nuovo bisogna farlo.
Ma quindi Roberto, cioè, quello che diceva nella domanda era di dire riutilizzo cosa è stato fatto in altri posti, magari in modo innovativo, integrato, che non è detto che sia una cosa cioè, mai vista prima. Questa mi pareva fosse la domanda.
Noi non, cioè, noi riteniamo, vorremmo trovare quella soluzione innovativa per la nostra città, cioè la nostra città ha delle caratteristiche particolari e su queste caratteristiche particolari bisogna costruire la proposta innovativa. Non è detto che le soluzioni di altre città vadano bene, oppure anche sì. Noi, la nostra sfida come tema principale è il cambiamento di comportamento, e questo è quello che vorremmo trovare nelle soluzioni innovative che stiamo cercando. Cambiamento di comportamento di mobilità sulla nostra città, che è metà su terra, metà su acqua, che ha una buona rete ciclabile, che ha queste condizioni già disponibili, ma non riscontra ancora significativi incrementi di mobilità sostenibile.
Posso...
Allora, dovrei tradurre, credo, per il... Should I translate for the rest of the people?
I think what we can do, Paola, is maybe we'll if you can share the translation via email. And the question and the answer, and then we can make sure that that is shared after the fact when we do the follow-up with everyone, because I'm conscious that we're over time and I know that people will want to head off to other things. So if we can maybe capture that by email and share it afterwards, that would be great. Is that okay, Paola?
Okay.
Brilliant. So thank you so much, everyone, for your time today. I guess I just want to finish up quickly by saying that if anyone does need support in preparing their entry, there is a lot of information on our website. You've obviously already signed up for this webinar. We have lots of other webinars that are scheduled, so please take a look at what's coming up over the summer. You can also book a one-to-one session with the Sustainable Cities team. That's a 15-minute session to be able to share any questions or comments that you may have. Please note that we are not able to review or kind of take a look at applications entries themselves, but we can answer any questions that you may have. And of course, if you have any general problems or challenges in submitting the entry, you can always email us at info@sustainablecitieschallenge.org. So please do go ahead and reach out to us. We're more than happy to pick up a conversation after the fact. So a big thank you once again for your time and for joining us today. We're really grateful and excited that we share with you information on the Sustainable Cities Challenge Venice, and I look forward to hearing more from you and hopefully receiving entries from all of you. So thank you so much and have a wonderful day.
Yeah, bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.